Hello everyone and welcome back to The Opinion, the talk show where your opinions matter. I am Mirna Santiago, and joining me today for our discussion on whether the media manipulates cultural perceptions of beauty is my co-host Adeline Ortiz and high school senior and debate winner Nalia. Welcome to the show, Nalia.
Thank you.
Well, as usual, before we delve into today's topic, we'd like to give you some examples of the feedback that we received from our last topic on immigration and whether or not Puerto Rico should become the 51st state. And here's what we got back. On the issue of immigration, Kevin from Pauling says, the whole melting pot thing is overrated. We need to have one cohesive nation, not 50 mini nations jammed into one. It bugs me that we have pockets of cultural society everywhere. Chinatown, Koreatown, Washington Heights, Little Italy, etc. If you love your country so much, why don't you just stay there? Okay. On whether Puerto Rico should become the 51st state, Damien from Patterson says, Puerto Rico is actually less of a drain on the federal government than the state of Michigan, which has the highest rate of public service disbursements like welfare, food stamps, and Medicare. But you don't see people asking Michigan to secede from the union, do you? In addition, Puerto Rico has a booming tourist industry. That little island is visited by more than 4 million people a year. That's about the number of its local population. Imagine what it could be with the full backing of the U.S. federal government. Good question. Lisa from Stamford, Connecticut said, I agree with Professor Torres that Puerto Rico should not become a state. Puerto Rico has a rich culture and history and should not be forced to assimilate to American culture, which would include the loss of its language.
Thank you, Adeline, for that. Well, now on to the reason that we're here, and that is the question that we pose. Does the media manipulate the cultural perceptions and standards of what is beautiful or desirable? Now, Aldous Huxley, the renowned novelist and the person who wrote Brave New World, which was really about this utopian and perfect society, often spoke about brainwashing and how the way to get future people and future leaders to act the way you want is to condition them from inception, from the beginning, by feeding them media images, by putting them in front of a TV and sort of, creating this blank slate where you tell them what it is that you want them to know. Now, when a person becomes brainwashed or indoctrinated in that way, like the way Aldous Huxley says, that person begins to think that this is their own thought. They don't even realize that they're brainwashed anymore. And that was something that really kind of came to mind for me when I was watching Chris Rock's documentary, Black Hair. And Chris Rock really, he doesn't talk about brainwashing, but he talks about the extremes that black women go to straighten their hair, and they'll put the weaves in, and they'll put the lace front wigs. Now these ladies are going bald practically from the chemicals they're putting in their hair, from the glue, from sewing it in, but they're going to do it. They're going to do it regardless because they have in their mind this sort of standard of beauty that's not really attainable for them because that's not the way they were naturally made. And I got to tell you, I mean, that kind of frustrates me, and I kind of blame the media for that. So, Adeline, what are your thoughts on this?
Don't even get me started. I am so sick of the size zero model. I'm so sick of just all of the way that the media and commercials and television shows, just this absolute perfect world that we appear to live in. I think that in 100 years, people are going to look back on today's television shows and programming and commercials and advertising and just think that we lived in just the most perfect world ever. Yeah. No one has a blemish. Nobody has a wrinkle. Nobody has anything. And I'll tell you, if you just watch any of the women's channels, on television, Lifetime or Women's Entertainment Network or what have you, it is just endless, the barrage of anti-wrinkle creams, weight loss programs, and so on, that I can't even look in the mirror anymore without thinking, oh my God, maybe I should try one of those anti-wrinkle creams. Or, which is it going to be? Jenny Craig, Lucille Roberts? Absolutely.
No, I agree. And it seems like every culture has its own issue because, I started off talking about black women in their hair, but then you also have the white women with the never, you can never be too thin sort of mentality. reality. Now, Nalia, I know you're from, you know, East Indian and Puerto Rican descent. So is there an issue in the Indian culture or the Puerto Rican culture that you want to talk about? Because I know I can go on about hair forever.
Well, I feel like in every culture there's going to be something that is not, that they don't like about themselves. For East Indians, it would be skin color, and the lighter you are, that's how attractive you're considered to be. So the highest grossing beauty product in India is fairness or bleaching cream. So that's pretty shocking that they feel like they need to be lighter to be beautiful.
And we're seeing that too in other cultures now. I know in places in Africa, for instance, the highest grossing cosmetic product is bleaching cream or some sort of product to make yourself lighter, which is really sort of sad. Yeah. Well,
but again, who has imposed that idea on us that, you know, the lighter is more beautiful? I mean, look at everything that is imposed on us, again, by television, movies, you know, light skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, big breasts, okay? You know, it's just endless. Botox and so on and so forth. Again, the idea that has been impressed on us is just this standard of perfection, and that with that standard of perfection, it appears to be the lighter your skin is, the straighter your hair is, the lighter your eye color is, the more perfect you are. And even where you have programs, even on the children's level, the Disney Channel, where you have programs that are starting to bring in more diverse cultures and bring in more, let's say, African American actors and actresses and child actors, they still tend to be the light-skinned with very fine features, the narrow noses and the high cheekbones and the perfect long flowing hair, and so on. Again, there's a certain standard that that Hollywood adheres to, and that standard is just pervasive across all levels of media.
But I think one of the things that we have to do, you know, going back again to the whole brainwashing thing, not to beat a dead horse, but I think one of the ways that people start to get out of that whole brainwashing thing is realizing that they've been brainwashed. You know, which is really part of maybe even this program, sort of letting people start thinking about certain things. And like you say, with the children's programs, you know, even the cartoons, when you look at some of them, and they're cartoon animals, but they're anthropomorphized. You look at, you know, Lady and the Tramp, and you have Lady, and she has these long flowing, you know, ears, and it's blonde, right? And her eyes are blue. What are we telling our kids? That's the standard of beauty. That's the woman that you should be pursuing, is a blonde, blue-eyed woman.
Yes. What's wrong with that?
Says the blonde, blue-eyed woman. Yeah. So, you know, but I think we're teaching our kids a really bad lesson, you know, and you're talking about the Disney Channel, where you have certain types of kids in there, and that's something that I complain about in my home all the time, is I'll watch a black show, and you'll see it's supposedly 2 black parents, but they'll have 3 or 4 kids, and 2 or 3 of these kids will be biracial kids. And for me, it's like, okay, I know I wasn't very good in science. That's what I went into law. You know, but, you know, how do you get 2 black parents and have a half-white child? I don't get it. But it's really because that's what's considered attractive. You know, let's put the biracial child out there and hope that people won't notice that that's not actually a fully black child. So, you know, we're doing something to our kids, and one of the things that we're doing to the kids is, I mean, if it was just, you know, the light thing, you know, the skin color thing, it would be okay, but we also have anorexia, right? Where now the kids are sort of looking at these magazines, they're looking at the skinny models, and anorexia is on the rise. So some magazines I know are doing something about it. And Nalia, do you know?
Right. Vogue decided not to use any models that were underweight or underage in their magazine anymore, so I thought that was positive for American girls out here that think that you have to be skinny to be in a magazine or to be someone.
Well, yeah.
Well, I think also that you raise a really important issue with respect to brainwashing. I taught marketing on the college level at Lehman College and Westchester Community College, a number of places, for a while. And one of the assignments that I always gave my students very early on was pay attention to the commercials. Whatever channel you're watching, whatever you're watching, whether you're watching a baseball game, football game, or, you know, one of those great women's movies on the Lifetime channel, which obviously I love. I want you, you know, instead of changing the television when the commercials come on, I want you to actually pay attention and bring in 3 commercials that played during that segment. And the guys always came back with, wow, you know, I never realized the number of hair loss commercials. Okay,
yes, for men, yes.
Viagra commercials. Okay, all of these commercials that play in between like sports teams and shows. So you have the hair loss, you have the Viagra, and you have lots of beer commercials, and in all of it, there's always beautiful women, and there's always that achievement of, okay, look what you can have. You know, if you had more hair, if well, if you're well, if Viagra worked for you, and so on. So and again, the women came back with the same thing. Oh, if I see one more anti-aging, you know, wrinkle cream or weight loss commercial or what have you, I mean, so clearly, yes, advertisers target certain markets and they create their commercials and their ads to reach that market, and it is a brainwashing. It is a very subtle brainwashing that over time does plant a seed in your head and does make you think the next time you're walking down that cosmetics aisle, hey, didn't I see that, you know, Regenerous, you know, I think I'll pick that up today. You know?
And, you know, I was talking to a male friend of mine about this issue, you know, and I said, I'm doing a show on this. And he says, oh, please, women complain all the time about how the media has these perceptions out. He says, have you ever looked at the superheroes and the bulging muscles on you know, he's like, well, what are we telling our young men, you know, that if you're skinny and tall, you're not okay. You know, if you're a little bit overweight, it's not okay. You have to look like a superhero, which is true as well. I mean, I think, you know, and you're talking about the hair loss commercials, so it's targeted to men as well. But I do want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned Vogue and how they are now not using the underage models or the models who are underweight. But this is recent. I think Vogue just did this, I think, this year. And what's good is that in Europe, they've been doing this since 2006. In Madrid, actually, in 2006, for the Madrid fashion show, they said we're not using any models who are below a certain body weight mass, which is great. And, you know, but that's fine. So now we're protecting, you know, skinny white women. What do we do about the hair issue with the black women? You know, every time I turn on the TV, there's Wendy Williams with her long blonde wig. There's, you know, Nicki Minaj. There's, you know, Beyonce. Even Beyonce, who's supposed to be the model of, you know, oh, am I too bootylicious for you? Or whatever it is she does about the body image. And there she is with the blonde wigs. It drives me crazy.
Okay, so you obviously have an issue with the hair, okay, with the hair thing. But you know what, and maybe that may be something that is very particular and specific to African American women to sort of give in, submit to that long, flowing, beautiful hair sort of standard. But what about our white women again? You know? You can never be too thin, you can never be too skinny. Oh my God, you know, I'm too fat. And, you know, the Botox. I remember years, I won't say how many years ago, but many years ago when I was in college and I tried my hand at modeling, I had a modeling studio tell me that my lips were too full, that they were too full to be a model. And now, what are all of the white Hollywood doing? They're getting collagen pumped into their lips to give them these. Okay, that you know, God sent me down with that. That was exactly so. What was unacceptable 20 years ago? Oh God, I said the number. You see, what was unacceptable 20 years ago is now all of a sudden, you know, the new standard of Hollywood.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And things change, I think, because you know when you look at the Rubens and you look at the paintings of long ago, I mean these women were really voluptuous, and then we kind of started getting into, even not so long ago, I mean, you know, in the 50s and 60s, we had some actresses who were healthy looking. They weren't twigs, and now everyone is just really, really skinny. So I don't know if you want to chime in on that before I get into the study that was done about, you know, television and young girls.
Yeah, I do. Actually, I think that the important thing is that all of these influences that are really imposed on us, you know, through television and media and in various ways, really only do one thing, and that's to just make us feel horrible about ourselves. Really, just to make us feel horrible about ourselves. Like every day, oh my gosh, I'm too fat, my lips are too thin, my hair is too curly, or you know, it's not straight enough, it's not long enough, I have too many wrinkles, you know, and so on. The only thing that it does is to make us really feel horrible about ourselves. And I think that this is a really important issue that that the media is starting to pay attention to, that even the legislature is starting to pay attention to, and that it's important that you're really chipping away at a person's self-esteem, but particularly when these commercials and these programs are targeting young children and teenage girls. It's a really terrible thing, because you are talking about someone whose self-esteem is being damaged so early in their lives. You know, now they have this additional obstacle, impediment to sort of overcome before they can tap into their own potential as human beings, and it's not fair.
It really isn't. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. A study in 2010 was done of several, I think it was several hundred 12-year-old girls, and what they did was they allowed a group of girls to watch TV as much as they wanted to, and then they limited the intake of media for the second group of 12-year-old girls. And what they found was that the girls who were allowed to watch TV as much as they wanted to, they started to develop body issues. Within a year, they started showing signs of disordered eating, whether by bulimia or anorexia, which, I mean, that's a direct link. And so let's talk about weight for a little bit now, because we know what we see in the media. We know we see these women and they're really skinny and what have you. But according to About.com, right, the average height and weight for a model is 5'10" and 110 pounds. Okay, the average height and weight for a normal woman is 5'4" and 145 pounds. Yay! So, Nalia, I have a question for you on this issue, because when you see these skinny girls in magazines, you're walking in the mall, and you see these advertisements for certain stores, and there's these skinny girls in their skinny jeans with their crop tops and whatever. How does that make you feel? And does it make you feel like your body type is wrong somehow, even though you know that you're within the normal parameters?
Well, of course, ads are going to make you want to fit into clothes like a model would, but I feel like teens, to be honest, are getting wiser about advertisements, and they know that everything they see isn't really real in a TV show or in a movie. So why should they be different if a movie is going to portray something as smaller than it would be in real life?
Okay, that's true. I mean, I think maybe we're not giving children as much credit as they deserve, they do know that superheroes don't actually fly and what have you, so why should they think the model's thigh is smaller? It's smaller than it appears. Now, Adeline, you mentioned legislation, and then I kind of cut you off on that.
Yeah, you did. No. Actually, I think that that certain European countries and the UK, France, have been exploring legislation with respect to this issue, and I believe that Israel also recently passed a law with respect to photoshopping images, right? About not using anorexic models or underweight models, and they're just not allowed, I guess, to use it. Or if they are photoshopping images that are being put in print, that they are going to now include some sort of warning or disclaimer that says that this image has been photoshopped. I think that's fantastic. I mean, honestly, the perception that the media has so created. If you look at pictures of Jennifer Lopez in the numerous magazines that she's in now, and you think that this is what the average Puerto Rican woman looks like, oh my God, then you've never been to Orchard Beach, right? You've never been to Orchard Beach. There's someplace that you have to go, because there is where you will get an eyeful as to what the average Puerto Rican woman looks like. And I'm telling you right now, J-Lo is not it.
Well, you gotta remember too that when J-Lo first came out in Living Color all those years ago, and I'm dating myself, I always date myself with these shows that I mentioned, but when you see her in Living Color, she had dark curly hair, her nose was different, her body type was different, and as she's become more successful, she's become more Caucasian somehow. The same thing with Halle Berry, the same thing with so many other women where, now you're successful, so let me change my hair, let me change my nose, let me change my body type to appeal to a different sort of demographic, which I think is sad, because what that ends up doing doing is they don't, the little girls of color, whether it's Indian, well, Indians have a whole other problem because you guys are just invisible in media. There are barely any Indian, you know, actresses in the media. So you do see some black people, you see Latinas, but you know, they're sort of boxed into a certain look, into a certain sort of appearance to make them palatable to the majority, which I think is very sad because, you know, yeah, the little girls don't really have a model to look to. Now, you know, I have a question for our viewers about the whole Israel thing with the Photoshop and the law. Now, is there something that we should be doing here in terms of passing legislation about the models? You can't use underweight models, because I know Vogue has done it, but they've done it voluntarily. Is it overkill to pass these laws and say to the magazines, you cannot use these skinny models on the magazine? I don't think it's overkill at all. You know, a foundation published, the Now Foundation actually published a study that found that 81% of 10-year-old girls already think they're overweight, already think they're fat.
Absolutely.
Okay? And 80% of girls in 4th grade are already dieting. So there's obviously something going on. There's obviously something pervasive. I don't know if we want to go ahead and call it brainwashing, but there's something that needs to be done.
I think that children should be taught up to care for their health and their bodies at a very young age, because we do have problems with obesity and overweight issues in children now. But I think that young girls in particular are very sensitive to this, because as they're growing up and they're seeing these child stars, iCarly and Victoria Justice and, you know, all these, Justin Bieber and what have you, Selena Gomez, and they're also beautiful and they're also slim and they're also pretty and they, you know, sing and dance and what have you. As they're seeing this, I think that they are already developing a sense that they have to fit this certain mold too, that they have to be very slim, you know, that they have to be very perfect, and that's different. That's different, because I think it does lead to certain eating disorders. I think it does lead to, you know, bulimia, just anorexia, binging, you know, certain things like this, and I think that is a very important concern that that, you know, media is really doesn't really care about, honestly. As long as the model looks good in print on the cover of something, what do they care what eating disorders she's dealing with?
We're going to kind of segue into our lightning round discussion, because I see that we're almost out of time for the media manipulation of the perceptions of beauty. Now, I want to give some background for this lightning round discussion, because there's stuff that has come out. There was this 14-year-old girl, her name is Julia Bloom, and she started a petition to 17 magazine asking them to please not use Photoshop in one particular segment, you know, of the magazines. She said, you know, just one spread, don't use the Photoshop, so the girls out there could see what these models actually look like without Photoshop. And 17 magazine said no. They said, we are showing women in their best light. She got 30,000 signatures on the petition, and 17 magazine did not care. They were like, no, we are depicting women in their best light. We're not going to stop using Photoshop. We're going to use it anyway. Now,
they're not showing women in their best light. There's no question about that, okay? What you're doing is showing them in their fake light, okay? Because in reality, teenagers have such a range of hormonal issues as they're going through that teenage stage. I don't know any one teenager who has not had a phase of this, you know, pimply face, you know, awkward teeth, you know, growing in a different, I mean, I look even at my own children who are preteens, and I say, oh, good grief, you know, like, you know, look at the teeth straightening out and all of the awkward stages that they're going through. I have nieces who are 12, 13 years old, and you know, their hair is not perfect, their teeth aren't perfect, they, you know, they need braces, they have pimples, you know, they're going through all of these hormonal changes, and they're not beautiful people. They're on their way to becoming beautiful girls, I suppose, at some point. But I can't say that as I look at them in their average natural state, you know, that oh my God, they're amazing. And this is what I tell them too. Look, when you guys are looking at those teen magazines and you see that these other child stars are so perfect and beautiful, they are not. They've been fixed up. Those blemishes, those pimples, those scars, or whatever it is that's going on with them have been fixed. And you know, we even use like sort of these home Photoshop programs to show them how I can alter a picture of any one of them at any moment, and show them how I can turn them into something completely different by just playing with the computer a little bit. So it's by far not,
It's not. It's
their
not.
best thing.
Actually,
I do read 17 magazine, and I feel like it does at some point show teenagers in the right light, saying that there are problems in the magazine in different sections that tell us what's going on with us or problems that we're having and different issues, and even teens writing stories to 17 magazine that are in the issues that show problems that we're having. And if anything, I don't feel like the issue should be Photoshop. I feel that it should be the makeup, the hair, and the preparation that goes into taking the picture, because that is also a problem, not only the Photoshop that happens after the picture's taken.
Sure.
well, that is true. I mean, I agree
Sure.
with that as well. There's so much more than just Photoshop. And I have to say, I know I've come on pretty strongly about the whole media manipulations of the standards of beauty and what have you, but I actually think, like with Photoshop, I don't have a real problem with it. I don't have a real problem with trying to show a dress, say, in their best light. I mean, if Kim Kardashian is wearing a dress on a cover, perhaps I want to see the dress. I don't want to see Kim Kardashian's back fat, kind of spilling over in the dress. So go ahead and Photoshop that.
Why? Why? Every other woman's back fat is showing. Every other woman's. So why shouldn't she also be shown with her imperfections? I actually have a member of my family who does this photoshopping work for major magazines, and it's amazing. He's like, oh my gosh, you should see the cottage cheese I cleaned off of, I won't say what celebrities' names, legs this week, okay? If you saw what this woman's legs actually look like, you wouldn't believe it. But that's not what we're going to see, right? What we're going to see are those perfect legs, are those absolutely perfect legs. So, it's not fair, because that is what the average woman looks like, okay? With the cellulite or with the back fat or with, whatever imperfections she has, because that's what we are, imperfect beings. We're not perfect, and that's what Photoshop is doing, is really creating this digitally perfect
fantasy,
person.
exactly. And I do agree with Julia Bloom, though, and I thought her petition, her request was actually very reasonable, to ask a magazine, please do one spread with a celebrity who's willing to be sort of the guinea pig, and show off her imperfections, so 13 and 14-year-olds could see, that this person does have back fat, or this person does have cellulite, or she has blemishes before they put on all the makeup. I thought that was a really good idea, and I was kind of disappointed when they turned her request down. But, well, that's really all the time that we have for today. And thank you, Nalia, for being here. I hope you viewers out there enjoyed our discussion on this topic. And next time we'll be discussing whether workers should be penalized for speech that they put on social media. Yes. Like Twitter and Facebook. And, several people have been disciplined and fired for that sort of speech. So, thank you so much for watching, everyone.